Hi everyone, my name is Prateek Malik and I'm a certified professional on Kirkpatrick 4 levels of evaluation. Let us understand more about it. In this presentation, you'll be able to identify Donald Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of training evaluation. Now, let us understand what are those 4 levels of training evaluation. The L1 being reaction, L2 being learning, L3 is behavior, and L4, yes, it is the results. The level 1 and level 2 plays a vital role when it comes to effective training, when you have to really gauge the effective training. How effective was the training? And L3 and L4 comes into play when you have to talk about the training effectiveness. Let us understand each of these levels one by one in more detail. So level 1, which is the reaction, talks about to what degree participants react favorably to the learning event. Level 2, which is learning, it talks about to what degree participants acquire the intended knowledge, skills and attitude based on their participation in the event. Level 3, which is behavior, for which you're actually doing the training, it talks about to what degree participants apply what they have learned during the training when they are back on the job. And yes, this is what we are doing the training for. This is level 4, which talks about results. To what degree targeted outcomes occur as a result of learning event and subsequent reinforcement. Now that you know the meaning of each of the levels, let us move forward and understand each of the level from the point of view of the principle, tools, methods, techniques and the timing for the application of that particular level. Level 1 is the reaction, which is nothing but the feedback from your participants. There are 3 critical parameters on which the reaction is recorded. The first one being the customer satisfaction. When you talk about the customer satisfaction, it has to do with something like logistics that you provide during the training program. It could be related to the classroom infrastructure. It could be related to the food that you're giving them during the lunch breaks or the tea breaks. It could be the stay arrangement that you've done for them. So basis that, it is the satisfaction score that you get in their feedback form. Second critical parameter is the engagement, which is more to do with the interaction. Are the participants really being engaged in the training program? Right. So that is the second most critical parameter. Third being the relevance. Since a lot of times we are dealing with adults, it is very important that you give them information which is relevant to them. So another parameter on which the reaction is recorded is the relevance. The subject on which the training was given, was it relevant to them or not? Let us now understand the methods, tools and techniques of recording a reaction. A feedback which is taken during the session is called as formative, whereas a feedback which is taken after the training session is called as summative. In formative feedback, generally there are techniques which are used like instructor observation questions, pulse check techniques, survey questions. So you can, in between the session, the instructor can actually ask all of these questions. Is the audience really liking the session? Are they comfortable? Are they happy with the kind of meal given to them? So these are certain types of formative questions, formative feedback what an instructor can take from the audience. Whereas summative is generally more of a, you put it in the hard copy. It could be in the form of an interview, it could be form of focus group questions that you ask. Just like any other thing, the timing of recording the reaction is also very important. Typically measured right after the event. So you take the summative feedback from the participants. Although it is also said, you must focus on the formative feedback because that is the kind of a feedback that you're getting during the session. Now comes in the real brainer, the level 2, learning. There are 5 critical parameters when it comes to learning: knowledge, skills, attitude, confidence, and commitment. Let us double click on each of these critical parameters and know more about it. Knowledge is when your audience says, I know it. Whatever you have taught them during the training program, if they are able to grasp it, they would come to a point that they will say that I know it. Skill, when you make them practice on the knowledge that you've imparted to them, they'll be able to say, I can do it right now. Generally talks about the role plays. Attitude, I think it is one of the critical parameters one should look into while designing the training program. It is possible only when you've identified the real gap, right? So odd attitude comes in when the relevance of information is there for the participant. When the participant says, I believe this is worthwhile for me. Confidence, it comes with a proper working environment. You might be giving them best of the environment during the training program, but the reality in the external environment in which they are operating could be a little different. So till the time they don't get a proper working environment, they'll not be able to say, I think I can do it on the job. However, if we can provide them with a proper working environment, they would certainly say, I think I can do it on the job. Commitment, the most difficult thing that you expect from an individual. But if you get that kind of a commitment from your participant who says that he or she is ready to apply that learning, it is very clear that the participant also is from within. He's saying that I intend to do it on the job. Let's summarize whole of the learning parameters, which is the knowledge, skill, attitude, confidence, and commitment. I know it, I can do it right now, I believe this information is worthwhile, I think I can do it on the job, I intend to do it on the job. So that's the power of the facilitator to really get the things moving. Let's talk about the methods, tools, and techniques to measure learning. There are formative techniques, there are summative techniques. Formative are again, you're doing a knowledge check in between, you're doing a kind of a discussion with your participants. It's an individual or a group activity that you do with them. It's an action planning or a role play that you're doing during the training program. However, when it comes to summative, it is more to do with the record keeping of it. So it could be a knowledge test, quiz, or a post-test presentation by the participants on their learning. It could be a teach-back session. It could be a demonstration of a particular skill. It could be a survey or an interview as well. The timing, the best timing to really gauge whether the learning has been taken by the participant or not is by doing it. You can do a pre-test before the session and a post-test after the training session. Generally, the tests are conducted to really gauge the knowledge transfer by the participants. It is a healthy thing to use both formative and summative methods. Third is a critical one, the level 3, which is the behavior. To what degree participants apply what they learn during training when they are back on the job. This is something which is really not in control of a trainer. But yes, there are certain things during the planning of the training program. This is something which is very critical and should be well thought of. There are required drivers to really, bring in that behavioral change in an individual. Processes and systems that reinforce, monitor, encourage, and reward performance of critical behaviors on the job. Well, there was a study which was done by Rob Brinkerhoff in 2006, and the source of this information is from Telling Training Story. So there are certain set of things that we apply in training. You do a pre-training preparation, which is something to do with the gap analysis. You do design, development, and delivery of the training, and then there is post-training follow-up. So in one of the groups, it is the pre-training preparation is done only 5%. The effort is only 5%. The design, development, and delivery. Generally, people from the training, they put in the best of the efforts and getting the best of the job aids, best of the design in the presentation, and they hire best of the trainers for the delivery of the program. However, the post-training follow-up is only 5%. And if you really take a look at the training application part of it, it is only 15% who achieve sustained new behaviors. There are few 70% who tried new skills but then they failed. And there are 15% who will not just try the new skills because there is no one who has asked about it. Let's take a look at the another example, another story. Here is another study conducted by Rob Brinkerhoff in 2006 with a different set of people, wherein the pre-training preparation was given 25% of the weightage, design, development, and delivery was given another 25%, and most of the effort was put on the post-training follow-up. And nonetheless, the results are also very different in this particular set of experiment that was done by him. 85% of the participants achieved sustained new behaviors. So it clearly talks about it's just not the things which are happening inside the training program, but it are those drivers post the training programs which brings in the real behavioral change. Now let's understand few key principles for bringing in that behavioral change. First, identify 2 to 3 critical behaviors that will influence level 4, that is results. The level 3 includes not just behaviors but also the required drivers. We'll talk about those required drivers in detail in the next slides. The performance is the responsibility of training participants and the business managers. We as training professionals generally talk of one thing. It is the learner, till the time he or she doesn't want to change, even we as a training professional will not be able to bring in that change. So the performance is the responsibility of the training participants and of course their business managers. It cannot be just that the participants keep on doing something and their business managers are not aligned to that. Fourth is preparing participants and managers for their role before, during, and after the training is the responsibility of the training professional. We as training professionals most of the time only concentrate during the training. It's very rare that we get involved with the business managers of the participants before the training or after the training. So if you really want to bring in that behavioral change, it is equally important to give importance to before and after the training. Let's take a look on those methods, tools, and techniques to bring in the behavioral change. There are 4 parameters, 4 tools which I've talked about over here. One is reinforcing, second is encouraging, third is rewarding, fourth is monitoring. In reinforcement, it's the reinforcement of the learning that you've imparted to your participants during the classroom training program. One of the ways could be work review checklist that you can give to them. The process that you probably would have taught during your training program is something that you have to give a checklist on, an on the job training program. So whatever learning that you've imparted during the classroom training, is it really happening on ground or not? You can run a check by doing on the job training as well. You can conduct classroom refreshers. You can give job aids to your participants. Second is encouraging them. You are monitoring that there's something happening with them and they need a bit of coaching or mentoring to really overcome that particular aspect. Third, reward. Yes, if your participants are from the sales background or they are people who are into sales typically, yes, they need to have that reward. They need to have that recognition, bonuses, or pay for performance in the form of incentives as well. Fourth parameter is monitoring them. Give them action based learning, conduct interviews, do an observation. As a business manager, I should review the performance. I should observe my participant. I'm my subordinate, whether the person is really doing well or not. A self monitoring. It purely depends on an individual. A commitment from the individual itself. That I should be committed to something, and am I really delivering the things or not? A work review. It could be a weekly. It could be monthly. It could be bi-monthly. So it purely depends on the nature of the job of an individual. And yes, if you put it in their KPIs, nothing like it. When do we measure the behavioral change? How do we really show in the impact of the training? So it's important to measure before and after the training if you need a major change in behavior. Consider a reasonable start timing. Generally, you give 1 to 2 months for a person to really bring in and show that behavioral change. And comes the level 4, which is the results. Donald Kirkpatrick talks about ROE, not ROI. ROE stands for return on expectations, the expectations of the business managers and the stakeholders. So it says what training delivers to key business stakeholders, demonstrating the degree to which their expectations have been satisfied. The leading indicators, let's talk about it. Short term observations and measurements that suggest that the critical behaviors, the L3, are on track to create a positive impact on desired results. So, this is something which should be talked with the business teams well in advance before starting the training. What is their expectation from the training? Here are a few principles that one has to look into when you talk about results. Determine desired result based on stakeholder input, which is the ROE, return on expectations. Borrow metric whenever possible. Third, identify leading indicators, checkpoints with the goal. So, leading indicators are generally to do with a specified matrix that one has to, really keep a check on whether the things are moving in the right direction or not. And all said and done, level 4 is the easiest to measure, but unfortunately the hardest to correlate with training. Just like L1, L2, L3, there are methods, tools, and techniques for L4 as well, which are the results. It could be summative, it could be a customer survey, it could be borrowed business and HR matrices, validation letters, monitoring action plans, or intangible benefits list. Summative is, you showcase where the people were, before the training and where they are after the training. It could be a customer survey, it could be something to do with, the satisfaction level of the customers. Of course, it could be a business metrics or the HR matrices which shows, an overall change in the personality or in the results what the person is bringing in. It could be a validation letter from a customer, it could be a validation letter from the superior. And you have to keep a watch on how the things are happening. It's the monitoring action plans. Talking about the timing of level 4, it is good to, link it with the smart goals. When you talk about timing, it has to be really smart. It has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be achievable, it has to be realistic, and yes, it has to be time bound. For every goal, every leading indicator that you're specifying, there has to be there has to be timing for it. Only then you are able to monitor those leading indicators along with the goal. Keep that in mind. And we see the Kirkpatrick Evaluation Method going upside down. So, what it says is always keep the result in mind before starting. Level 4, which talks about the results, yes, this is where you identify the gap. To summarize the Kirkpatrick Evaluation Method, let's talk about the results. Yes, so these are the return on expectations that you set with your business managers or your stakeholders. Identify the leading indicators, those indicators which will help you understand whether you are on the right track or not. Basis those leading indicators, identify those 2 to 3 critical behaviors which are essential to bring the things, bring out those, bring out the behavior in the person. Basis those critical behaviors, you design your training content. This is where most of the training professionals fail. We generally take that for every problem the solution is training. It is not necessary that for everything there has to be a training. So you've got to have that meetings with your stakeholders, identify those leading indicators, bring in those critical behaviors, and then basis that only put your first foot forward in building up the content. And yes, at last, it is important for a trainer also to feel motivated. You have to gauge the reaction of those trainings of, for your participants. I hope you enjoyed this session, enjoyed this presentation on the Kirkpatrick Evaluation Method. All the best and thank you very much to all of you. Take care. Bye bye.